In this week's edition of Endzone Insights, we'll be looking at the hot takes that you, as the fans, have made for the upcoming college football and NFL season, all on Endzone Insights. Welcome back into Endzone Insights, where you can get the best takes from the next generation of football fans. I am your host, Darius Fitzpatrick, and summer's almost over, which is pretty sad for me as still a high school student. But that means that football is almost back, and I think that is the thing that we are all hoping for at this point in time. So before either the college football or the NFL season begins, I want to get into some hot takes that you, as the fans, have given me and that we shall discuss today. And we will be looking at whether or not these hot takes that you guys have made will be happening or not. And some of these hot takes are a bit longer than others, so I broke them into pieces. So I'll be looking at one part and then going to another part, if that makes sense. With that being said, let's jump into it. We'll begin in the NFL, and Amos Cady says that Jalen Waddle will lead the league in receiving yards, and the Broncos will win the Super Bowl. Now I'm going to be looking at this in two parts. First off, Jalen Waddle leading the league in receiving yards. I don't see this happening. Jalen Waddle is a very good wide receiver and an amazing pickup for the Denver Broncos. I don't want anyone to think I believe he is a bad receiver. But the style he plays as a wide receiver, as a speedster, doesn't allow him to get to be a big reception guy, which limits the amount of yards he is able to get. He has also struggled in the last few years as he had 744 yards in 2024 and 910 yards last year. Not bad numbers at all, actually pretty impressive numbers, but considering what we saw him do in his first 3 years in Miami, you expect him to do more. Now, I will say those 2 down years that he had were when things in Miami were starting to unravel, so I will give him some grace there. And now that he's in Denver with a proven head coach and proven supporting cast around him that is legitimate, I believe that he will finally get them back to being the 1,000-yard receiver that we all know he can be. However, to think that he will lead the league in receiving yards when he is not much of a big reception guy and he's had down seasons the last 2 years makes me say no, this will not happen. However, Denver winning the Super Bowl, that is something that I could easily see. The Broncos nearly made it last year, even when Bo Nix went out with an injury against the Buffalo Bills in that divisional round game. Their defense was one of the best in the NFL last season, and with the new offensive coordinator, Davis Webb, the offense should be much more consistent than it was last year. Now, the one thing that does concern me, though, is Bo Nix's injury and how soon he will get back to full speed, because I generally do have concerns about where he will be at after suffering such a major injury. However, the AFC is wide open this season, and the Broncos should seem like the most complete team out of everyone in that conference. So I could easily see the Broncos making it to the Super Bowl this year. And if Jalen Waddle does lead the league in receiving yards, as you say, then that means the Broncos offense is much more equipped for a Super Bowl run than last year when they almost made it to the Super Bowl then. Here is the only problem with what you said though, Amos. Amos, you said that they would win the Super Bowl, and while I think the Broncos are legitimate contenders, I just don't think anyone can stop that LA Rams team. That team has way too much firepower, and they have way more experience, and frankly, less flaws than the Denver Broncos do. So while I would not be surprised if the Broncos win the Super Bowl, they are not my pick to win it. But that was a really good start off to hot takes, and we're going to be switching gears right now and getting into college football, where Jude Viss says Ryan Williams will continue to suck. I'm quoting this just for anyone wondering. I did not actually say this. This is just what Jude Viss said. But anyway, now after thinking about it for a little bit, I don't believe he will have another down year like he did last season. Now, do I think he will have the greatest wide receiver season in Alabama history? No. But I do believe that he will have a bounce back season with the Tide. I feel that many people forget this, but he had multiple injuries throughout the 2025 season last year. And when you look at his play, you could see that he was not himself. I believe that those injuries were a bigger part of the problem last year because I don't know how a receiver who was torching defenses as a freshman in the SEC suddenly becomes pedestrian. I'm not saying that he not. Oh, I'm not saying that he will have as good a wide receiver season as he was his freshman year, but I don't believe that without any injuries and the talent that he has, he'll have another down year like last year. Well, we are going to take a quick break right here, and when we come back, we'll discuss some QB quick hot takes in the NFL. Welcome back into Endzone Insights, and we shall be continuing this hot takes episode in the NFC. And these are two separate questions, but since I felt that they were both very similar, I just thought that I should combine them. Anyway, we have Jensen Kreischild saying that Caleb Williams will win MVP and the Bears go undefeated to win the Super Bowl, while Sam Stewart said Brock Purdy will win MVP and the Super Bowl. Both of these guys say that their teams will win the Super Bowl and have an MVP at QB. Now, I just want to start off with Jensen's answer here, where he says that the Bears will go undefeated. They're not. Not even going to entertain this, really. No team has gone undefeated in a season since the 1972 Dolphins, and since that, the schedule has gotten longer, more injuries have occurred, and it's absolutely not going to happen. I do not see this happening at all. But anyway, you both have your teams making the Super Bowl and winning it. I can't say that I see that happening. For the 49ers, they are too old on both sides of the ball, and they no longer have the depth that they once had. While I do expect them to be good this year, I don't see them being able to compete with the younger teams in the NFL, such as the Rams or the Seattle Seahawks. I am more optimistic about the Bears though, as they have a young group with them, an offensive genius at head coach. Here's the main issue though with the Bears. They had quite some miraculous things happen for them last year that I don't think can repeat themselves this year. Like all those late comebacks and the high amount of turnovers, defensive takeaways on the which on an other was on an otherwise below average defense. Sorry about that, kind of messed up and tripped over. But anyway, as I already mentioned, the Rams are a team so well rounded that I have them making the Super Bowl and winning it all, not the Bears. It may seem like I'm glazing the Rams a little bit, but I'm doing that because because I want to emphasize how well rounded of a roster they have. Still though, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears made it instead though. The 49ers are a little bit less believable though. Now, the final part of this prediction is that either Brock Purdy or Caleb Williams will win the NFL MVP. I'm a little skeptical on that for Brock Purdy, but I can fully see it happening for Caleb Williams. Now, Brock Purdy has dealt with injuries over the last few years, keeping him out of many games, which makes me hesitant to say that he will win the MVP. Caleb, on the other hand, seems like a rising star who can make any throw, doesn't throw interceptions, and never gets hurt. Not to mention that he's going to be in his second season in Ben Johnson's system, and that I fully expect him to have a breakout season in his second year in that system. So while most of the parts of these statements, I don't believe will happen, I do see where you are coming from, Jensen, when you say that Caleb Williams will win MVP. Well, we're going to take one more break right here, and when we come back, I will give you my hot takes for the NFL and college football seasons. Welcome back into Endzone Insights, and as promised, I will be giving you my hot takes for the upcoming NFL season and upcoming college football season. I'm going to start off in the NFL just because I don't know why not. I didn't really think it mattered much. But anyway, my hot take for the upcoming NFL season is that Cam Ward will break out and will guarantee his spot as the Titans franchise QB. I loved what I saw out of Cam Ward last season. I feel like no one talks about what he was able to do because of the fact that one, the Titans were completely awful last year, and two, the Titans are a smaller market team. That being, but still, I believe that Cam Ward did pretty well considering all the circumstances surrounding the team, and you could clearly see why the Titans picked him number one overall. There were times last year when I was watching the Titans where they would be in a close game, and you could see that Cam Ward was really the only thing holding up that team. Now I think that he will be the next big thing in the NFL, not only because of his immense talent that he showed last year, but because I feel that the Titans did a lot of good things in the offseason. I really did like the hiring of Robert Saleh and Brian Daboll, along with the additions of Wan'Dale Robinson and Carnell Tate to truly give Cam Ward some weapons. Now, do I believe that the Titans will make the playoffs? No. I still think they have some work to do before that. But I think that the team will be in a much better situation compared to last year and will be much more improved. And will be in some close games against higher level teams. And I think Cam Ward will be front and center of that improved Titans team. And this will assure Titans fans that they were right to select him number one overall. Now, for my final hot take of the day, I predict that the Alabama Crimson Tide will miss the playoffs in 2026. I'm looking at this season for Alabama as a rebuild year for the team. Last year, they were not as great as their record showed they were. The offensive line had regressed compared to years past. The run game was one of the worst in school's history, and now the team is only returning 48% of their overall production from last year. That is 90 out of 138 in the FBS. This was headlined by starting QB Ty Simpson, who, as we all know, went to the LA Rams in the NFL draft last year. And when watching Alabama last year, I felt that Ty Simpson was the only thing holding up so many things for the team. Because they had no running game, Ryan Williams had regressed, and the offensive line was not doing anything to help out the running game or passing game. Yet Ty Simpson was able to hold things up and make them look like a legitimate contender for the Natty at some halfway through the season last year. And when Ty Simpson started to deal with injuries at the end of the season, that is when we really saw Alabama's offense become a shell of itself. Now he was gone, along with Caden Proctor, who was their standout offensive tackle, making the offensive line even worse than it was last year. So I don't expect the offensive line unit to improve much next year, especially with all of the inexperience that they will now have at the position. And if the offensive line is not flowing well, then the running game will not improve much either. That's not a great formula for a starting QB in either Austin Mack or Keelan Russell to step into. No matter which one of them starts, they will not get the same luxury that past Alabama QBs have gotten. Now, the defense was one of the better units in the country last year and should still be an overall force next year. Because of that, I still think that Alabama will be one of the better teams in college football next year. However, considering the fact that Alabama barely made it to the college football playoffs last year, and now the offensive line will more than likely, not just the offensive line, but the offense in total, will more than likely be worse this year, I doubt they make it to the playoffs. Well, that is going to wrap up this episode of Endzone Insights. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please send it to someone you know. If you disagreed with me on anything I said, please put in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you as the fans. I don't know what my next episode will be, but until then, be safe, be happy, and live your best life.